PharmaDrug CEO Daniel Cohen joins us now. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Daniel, let's start with an overview. What does PharmaDrug do?
So PharmaDrug is a European-focused medical cannabis company.
Okay.
Our primary market right now is Germany, although we expect to expand into the other European markets as they liberalize and open up. We bought the, PharmaDrug bought the asset, the license back in, we made our first down payment back in February. We closed the acquisition in May, and we took over operational control.
Oh,
and
cool.
so I'm not sure how much you know about the German market. A lot of people know that it's one of the more exciting markets in Europe and that it's slated to be one of the biggest markets. However, it's still quite early, and we feel that we're one of the early players that is going to contribute to its development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last I heard, there were 20,000 medical patients prescribed in Germany. Is that number grown?
The number grows, and it has grown. I forget what the latest specific number is, but the reality is that if you look at the Canadian market over the 5 years of the medical jurisdiction or framework before it went recreational, you went from 10,000 patients to 325,000 patients over a 5-year period. And Germany is 2.5 times the size of Canada. And so we are really, really in the early innings of Germany. And it might be 20, might be 30, might be a little bit more, but we are in that early period. And so while we're seeing really high growth, 80 to 100% a year, that exponential growth hasn't quite hit yet. And we expect that to start actually at some point in 2020.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are growing cannabis in Germany?
No, there is no growing in Germany right now. That's the unique opportunity. Europe is it started later than North America did, obviously.
Yeah.
And Germany, while it introduced its current framework in 2017, so it's only 2 to 3 years old right now, there is no growing in Germany right now. They import everything.
Huh.
They have given out 3 licenses for 3 different cultivators to develop, growing facilities. We expect them to be on by the end of 2020, perhaps early 2021. We know it always takes a little bit longer. However, the amount that they've been given to grow is not going to satisfy the demand in Germany. So we're going to see a continuous, infrastructure in Germany from the growing standpoint being behind where the demand actually is. So Germany will continue to be an importing market for the foreseeable future. So really, to be a player in Germany right now is to have the ability to bring product into Germany.
Oh, okay. So all 20,000 patients are mostly supplied by imported product?
The majority of the product right now actually comes from one source, and that's Bedrocan in Holland. There's only one LP, fully licensed LP in Holland. They're called Bedrocan. They can only sell to the Dutch government, and it's the Dutch government that sells to the German distributors right now. There's obviously some Canadian product that has started coming in. However, the majority of the product is still Bedrocan.
So the German government started, prescribing cannabis about 3 or 4 years ago, and yet it hasn't amped up, and mostly because everybody thinks it's a more conservative market. Is there the level of sort of investment going into German cannabis production at this point, or is the sort of conservativeness of the government dissuading investors from investing in Germany, and that's your opportunity?
I think the opportunity is that you're going to have the growing infrastructure is going to be behind the demand, as I had said before. The reasons for it aren't one-dimensional. There's always several factors going on. Definitely, whenever there's a new regime for medical cannabis, and that's obviously before recreational, it's obviously more conservative first. That was a factor. The other factor as well was that as they were looking to hand out cultivation licenses, the only people that had the expertise on a corporate level and in a legal jurisdiction were the Canadians. And I think there was some internal pressure in Germany to say, hey, whoa, let's not just give all the licenses out to the Canadians, give the German, parties time to catch up and get sophisticated enough so that we can not just develop this brand new market, brand new industry and give it to a foreigner. Obviously, the Germans want to make sure that there will be German participants as well. So that's also been a factor. That is starting to change. Obviously, like I said, 3 licenses have been handed out. We expect the production to start coming on stream in early 2021, whether it's late 2020 or early 2021. It'll reflect the demand, the constrained demand levels of 2018. So it's going to be 3 years behind. So that's one factor. You also always see a conservative nature when jurisdictions begin. However, that's already changing. We've seen recently that most of the major parties are talking about moving towards much more liberalized laws for cannabis, adult usage, recreational, or maybe just an easier way to be able to get access to medical cannabis. What's changed recently is that they have a new medical czar who's being proactive about talking about liberalizing laws more. And we've also seen a statement that the current ruling party, which is the most conservative of the larger parties in Europe, political parties in Europe, is talking about introducing adult usage as part of its policy. So, while we can say that the Germans are more conservative, they have been up to now, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to change the way it did in Canada.
So are the patients in Germany sort of having a hard time fulfilling their demand at this point? They are.
There's a problem with consistency, right? The majority of the product still comes from the Netherlands. And even then, you see a lack of consistency. Not every supplier is going to have access to that product at all times. Definitely the sales figures that we've seen have been supply constrained figures. And we are starting to see some Canadian product, but there's been some problems having consistency in that product. So not only is the liberalization or the society becoming more accepting of medical cannabis going to be a factor in the growth of the demand, not only is it going to be just time, right? As time goes on, growth continues, and that patient base grows, but I also think a significant factor is going to be the additional supply that's going to start to show up. You can say that, hey, Germany accepts medical cannabis from importers because of the fact that we don't have any growing internally. That doesn't mean they're going to give up on the criteria that they need for the cannabis to be able to enter. And just like in Canada, we have some strict laws in terms of what Health Canada expects. The German regulators are perhaps even stricter. So, or even if it's not stricter, it might be different. Regulations in one country versus another. So the Canadian infrastructure, in terms of its growing, hasn't been perfectly linked up with what Germany is looking for. That's starting to change, and we're seeing more and more grows having the ability and the specifications that the German government's looking for. That's going to contribute to increased supply in Germany, which, like I said, is going to contribute to the growth of that market.
And what about recreational cannabis in Germany? Is that going to be a market anytime soon?
That's, like I said, even if the all parties agreed that they were willing to move towards recreational adult usage, it still probably requires a new election, and it requires new laws being put into place. It'll probably take 3 to 5 years at the earliest before we see recreational cannabis in Germany. But that being said, the medical market is just getting started, and we're going to see exponential growth over the next few years in the medical market alone. And being one of the early players there is extremely lucrative, especially if the way to really introduce supply is not to be able to build and grow, but to source it from countries who have exportable medical cannabis, whether it be Canada or whether it be Israel, that's on the come, and perhaps even some other European countries. We see ourselves as having a unique strategic role to play in that market. A lot of the larger players in Canada have bought their own distributors in Germany, but they're looking to sell their own product. You have some German players who don't really know the Canadian landscape that well, and so we feel that as Canadians who understand and who know a lot of the players in Canada and who also are players in Germany, we have that unique role where we can be an amalgamator of medical supply that isn't already part of a value chain or a supply chain, and we could be the linkage of Canadian supply that wants to go to Europe but isn't part of a larger organization. And that's why we feel we're going to be able to allow a lot of supply into Germany.
Sure. So how does a German citizen obtain a prescription for cannabis as a patient?
They go to a doctor.
So doctors are prescribing?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm curious as to why are there only 20,000 patients in Germany?
I actually think there's more than 20,000. I think
more?
it's 40 or 50,000 right now already. Well, you also have to understand, it only started in 2017. Right. So even if you take the Canadian, history, you start with 10,000 patients and then you go to 325,000 patients. For a first couple of years it doubles. So 10 goes to 20, 20 goes to 40, so on and so forth. But to get to that 325,000 100,000, at some point it becomes exponential. And, we are at that point where we're 3 years in.
Right.
The supply is going to start to increase. So I actually think that what you're going to see over the next 2-3 years is a really large increase, an acceleration of the growth rate, and a massive increase in the size of the German market.
Wow. Okay, that's great. That's a cool introduction. We're going to leave it there for now. We'll have you back, and good luck with the progress in Germany. Look forward to seeing what's happening.
Thank you.
Twenty-one, 2